just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history. What body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psephology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out.
حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة.
The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, the believers in the mutual kindness, compassion and sympathy are just like one body. When any part of the body suffers, the whole body feels pain. New Zealand mourns with you. We are one.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. Allahu Akbar.
This is Friday Java on the 22nd of March 2019 from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. Boston Red here from the Jerry Pippin broadcast booth. A sad note, a very sad note. The funerals for the victims of terrorism in New Zealand were buried, most of them on Thursday. And the Prime Minister, as you heard in our introduction here, was at the ceremony after the calls to prayer. She recited some words from the Holy Quran. Arcender Alden, a hero of New Zealand that has shown what we study in politics as something called a leadership. There can be leadership in the positive or leadership in the negative. Examples, of course, of leadership in the negative would be the regime of Adolf Schicklgruber, otherwise known as Hitler, that caused mass devastation to the world, killed millions of people, And this went down in history as a negative event if we look at it dialectically. Whereas in New Zealand, this brave young lady, I believe she's like 38 years old, brought the nation together. Not only did she bring the nation together, she proposed legislation to eliminate assault weapons from the landscape of New Zealand. And that legislation will go through their parliament. The opposition party signed off on it. A true quote-unquote bipartisan type of situation. And also addressing problems in New Zealand that have been more under the carpet than other countries in the area, specifically Australia, which has stricter gun laws in New Zealand, but at the same time a much more racist culture. And that type of racism, or crass racism, goes not only into the nation but into the foreign policy. Australia, of course, being most closely aligned with the U.S. in foreign policy. They had troops in Vietnam, along with Canada and other characters that sent troops there. And the foreign policy bases of the nation, DJ Trump, sitting at the White House, I assume, signed an order recognizing the illegal occupation of the Golan Heights. That is in direct conflict to international law. So thus, DJ Trump has aligned the U.S. with the outlaw Zionist nation of Israel. And that was due in part to enhance the chances of Bibi Netanyahu, the present PM of the Israeli government, and his various cronies. He's under indictment, of course, for corruption. But what has happened there is, with the Likud party, Netanyahu comes, I believe, today. They had Bolsonaro, the right-wing fascist leader of Brazil. He was there. And what people have to understand, and Representative Omar has highlighted that for the American people, but yet she was attacked by various assortment of racists in the Congress and racist organizations, and the commercial media went along with it. But what these people have to understand is the right-wing government in the Israeli state, the right-wing government in Brazil, and right-wing governments in European nations, primarily Poland and some of the others, that have these various right-wing factions and right-wing parties. They're aligned with the, and this is a global situation, with the Brexit people in the UK. Those right-wing elements, ultra-right-wing elements, fascistic parties, Le Pen in France, they're all the same. And this is a new way of looking at it, because the U.S. policy has been based on the policy of the racist Woodrow Wilson. Now that is a big problem. Some people literally do not understand history from the historic conditions. Now if you go back to the Balfour Agreement, I debated with some people on Facebook about that. They did not know that Balfour was the PM, and that was the British ruled now Palestine. And they decided to split things up, and they just implanted the Zionists there, out of air more or less, and decided to form that state. The U.S. signed off on it in 1948, relatively short period of time. Jimmy Carter was already around at that time. Incidentally, Jimmy Carter is the longest serving U.S. president, living U.S. president, not serving. He's 94 years old and 94 plus. Up to that time, it was George H.W. Bush. He died at 94. With Jimmy Carter is remarkable. Jimmy Carter was on the right side of the Palestinian issue, not the wrong side. And he's been condemned as an anti-Semitic person. That is a cliche people can hide behind. We at this mic have been labeled the same words. That doesn't really matter. In a political contest, particularly in the U.S., you're going to have excuse me, all types of petty name-calling would allow DJ Trump to attack John McCain, the late Senator John McCain, primarily because he voted for the Affordable Care Act and against Trump's regressive and right-wing legislation. Now, this is what it's all about. You have to take the whole package, where Jimmy Carter stands for the Affordable Care Act, DJ Trump stands against it. DJ Trump recognized the move of the Israeli capital from where it should be in Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Now, these situations are situations that go against the grain of the world. And what they would like to do here is spin this in such a way as they are doing in Brazil, in Venezuela. Let's get the other part of the situation in overthrowing the government. It is agreed that has happened. But the world has changed. There was a time when they could go into Guatemala, El Salvador, Cuba, and run these banana revolutions, put in these petty dictators. You can't do that anymore because the light is shining much more brightly. The world is much more interconnected. The powers have changed. When China and the Russian Federation, India, the vast majority of the world support President Nicolas Maduro Mora and not the clown Guaido. But the U.S. props them up. They run it in the media. They even bring on the British, who have their own problems now. Incidentally, the British got an extension of to April to take care of their Brexit situation, but they must first approve May's plan, which is a non-starter plan. Or if they cannot do that, then they'll have to extend it in to May, and if that doesn't work out, they'll probably end up with a 2-year extension, and they will remain in place as they are today. Brexit will go away. Brexit should go away, and that is one of the problems that has precipitated this entire situation that we now find ourselves in. It's a very, very unfortunate situation on a worldwide scale. So it goes from Christchurch, New Zealand, to Caracas in Venezuela, and beyond. These are the kinds of problems that we continuously see. We'll visit our friends at the University of Virginia, as we normally do on Friday Java, and get the latest there. And then we'll talk about some current things, look at some current polling, and of course March Madness. March Madness on Thursday brought about a surprise, but not as much as it did last year, with a lot of top seeds being knocked off. But we'll look at that, and we'll have special programming on the opioid crisis in New England, particularly in the Boston area, and with the drug Fentanyl. I think it's Fentanyl is how you pronounce it. Anyway, this is a drug that they mix with heroin, and you can die in about 2 or 3 seconds, literally. And how it affects particularly African American males and Latinos. So we'll look at that as a health crisis. On the open source report, we'll look at software and the Boeing 737 M8, is it? Anyway, we'll get that right in a minute here. But let's go now to the University of Virginia, and as we normally do, we pay homage to Heber Higher. And incidentally, while we are at this stage, the owner of the Patriots, Kraft, would not enter into a plea bargain agreement of all things. One of those situations that you do occasionally find out there, and evidently Kraft decided that he would not enter into the particular agreement. So thus there is a no agreement. Now to the University of Virginia here. This century's Electoral College trends, tracking the strength of the parties in all 50 states. And this is by Kyle Klondike. He is the managing editor at the Crystal Ball. Despite persistently close presidential elections this century, many states are becoming dramatically more Democrat or Republican compared to the nation over the course of the last decade and a half. Generally speaking, the Sun Belt and the West are trending Democratic, the Midwest and North more broadly, along with Greater Appalachia. Now that includes not only West Virginia but parts of Ohio and Pennsylvania. What does this mean for a state to trend, and what are the trends? It's become common to describe our home state of Virginia as a state that is trending Democrat. That's an observation we agree with. We use that from the exact term a few weeks ago. We used that exact term a few weeks ago in our initial Electoral College ratings. But what we are really saying is when we use the terms like that, what follows the exclamation and expiration of the recent presidential voting trends in Virginia and the other 49 states. A quick look at recent Electoral College history seems to confirm the Democratic trend in Virginia. Virginia voted 10 straight times for GOP ticket before the Democrats the last 3 times. But let's dig a bit deeper. As a note throughout the article, we are using 2 party presidential votes, which just measure Democrats versus Republican performance. No third parties here. This is a way to compare the 2 parties' performance across elections when the 2 major parties remain constant, but the presence of credible third-party candidates ebb and flow. The most dramatic recent shift in Virginia comes from 2004 to 2008, when the Old Dominion state moved from giving Democrat John Kerry just 45.9% of the 2-party vote to giving Democrat Barack Obama 53.2%, a 7.3% jump in share, and a 14-point jump in margin. Over the course, the nation as a whole moved from 48.8% for Kerry to 53.7% for Barack Obama, an increase of 4.9 points. Part of Virginia's stories is it shifted more dramatically for 2004 and 2008 towards the Democrats than the nation as a whole. On the other hand, since the shift, the Democratic 2-party share in Virginia has actually fallen 52% in 2012 to 52.8% in 2016. That's standard Democratic strength in Virginia actually backslid in both 2012 and 2016 when compared to 2008 to 53.2%. Well, compared to the nation voting in each of the last 3 presidential elections, Virginia is getting more Democrat. In 2008, Virginia's Democratic share was about a half point less than the nation's percentage, meaning Virginia was slightly more Republican than the nation that year, and by 2012 the Virginia presidential margin was in exact alignment with the nation's voting. Obama won at that time 52% in both that made Virginia more Democratic relative to the nation in 2012 than it had been in 2008, and Virginia voted clearly more Democratic in 2016. Hillary Clinton with Tim Kaine as her running mate, won Virginia at 52.8%, and the two-party while winning 51.1% nationally. We can use static called presidential deviation to show this trend, to calculate the presidential deviation. In this article, we are taking the National Democratic Party two-party share and subtracting it from the Democratic share in a given state in a given year. A positive number means that the state was more Republican in that election, a negative number more Democratic. The deviation is rounded to the nearest integer, and we see how this works out in Virginia and across the three elections. Now in 2008, 53.5% nationally, 53.2% in Virginia. That equals 0.5 tenths rounded to R plus 1. Anyway, we won't go into all of that. We'll just append this. In addendum to our election rating released a few weeks ago, we thought we'd track the presidential voting in each state relative to the nation's last 5 elections to give readers a sense of where the state is trending. We split the 50 states into 10 different regions. And let's see, comparing notes, I calculated these presidential deviations, which I used from my 2016 book on Ohio's presidential voting history, the Bellwether, using data from David Lippin's Atlas of LEPI of American presidential elections. The static is a little different than the common called partisan vote index created by our friends at the Cook Report. The PVI uses an average of 2 presidential elections to determine the leans in a given district. This presidential deviation calculation only involves how much more a Republican or Democrat a state was compared to the nation in a given year. Keep in mind that the key on the y-axis is showing the range of presidential deviations from high positive in most Republicans to high negatives in most Democrats. Differs from chart to chart. Anyway, now as a region that contains all the states that touch the Pacific Ocean, the West Coast plus Alaska and Hawaii. Hawaii stands alone from the other 4 in the Republican leans, which has become less pronounced this century, but is still clear. Meanwhile, the 3 coastal states, Oregon remains competitive but close to the national election of the Democrats, and of course we know about California. And we go to the northern interior west. Now, those would be Idaho and those states there, Montana, of course, John Tesler, the Dakotas, I think they're counting those in. All right, this is the South, well, wait a minute, hold this minute here. This is Idaho, Montana, North, South Dakota, and Wyoming. They're very small states, really wouldn't count unless the Electoral College. Presidential deviation in the southwest states, Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, and Utah. Utah is a little bit different there. Other than Utah, this is a competitive region. Noted how Nevada in gray hugs the 0 line there. Won't get much into that. You'll have to look at this for yourself. And then we get into the southern central states. That is Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Texas. At the start of the century, Arkansas, Louisiana still could have been classified as swing states. Both voted for Bill Clinton twice in the 90s, and as recent as 2004, had 2 Democratic senators. Even more Republican Oklahoma in the category. Meanwhile, Texas presidential lean very steady until 2016 when it took up a clear dip and became less Republican relative to the nation. Democrats are hopeful that 2016-2018 results will indicate a diversifying and growing state. Texas is the key to the Democratic strategy, in our opinion. Now, the western Midwest states, Iowa, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, and Nebraska. Now, that's a different situation there. Iowa has been Republican before, and I think if we look at this, the leans have not changed much over the several elections. Missouri State, once seen as a bellwether, has joined its two western neighbors in a safe Republican camp. Iowa took a sharp turn to DJ Trump. Barack Obama won Iowa both times he went. Meanwhile, the longest streak of voting Democrat in any state in the nation dating back to 1976, but believes it's competitive now. And this is Minnesota they're talking about there. Now, the eastern Midwest states, the way that Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, and Wisconsin, is clearly Illinois, no doubt about that, is clearly there. Both classic bellwether states have since deviated. Indiana is the most Republican in the core, no doubt about that. Barack Obama did carry Indiana in 2008. It's Republican leaned that year. In other years, it's still pronounced compared to the region. We can see Democrats close calls in Wisconsin in both 2000 and 2004. This chart, Wisconsin, of course, under Boss Walker, it didn't come around the third time. The third time is not the charm for Boss Walker. The greater Appalachian states, now they include Alabama here. I would not have Kentucky, Mississippi, Tennessee, and West Virginia. Well, West Virginia, Tennessee, anyway. Democratic strength has collapsed across the Appalachia, with West Virginia the only state wholly considered Appalachia by the Appalachian Region Commission, taking a turn towards the Republicans. Mississippi is an exception. Its racially polarized voting patterns seems to keep the state something of a stasis. Mississippi has the largest percentage, obviously, of African American residents of any state, but their overall Democratic voting is swamped by Europeans' numerical advantage and overwhelming Republican voting. None of these states will be a two-party competitive state in 2020. Well, that could change with West Virginia. It'd be very interesting if Bernie Sanders is the candidate, because Bernie did very well in West Virginia. I don't know how, say, a Beto O'Rourke would do. Southern Atlantic states is Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. Virginia is basically the only one here. I can tell you that very quickly. Democrats are hopeful that Georgia and North Carolina, which shares some Democratic similarities to Virginia, no doubt about that, but not as much voter suppression. Growing urban centers, important Democratic performance, but note how Georgia and North Carolina started the century with the pronounced Republican lean. Then Virginia, no doubt about that, and Florida is just a corrupt state. We don't even have them in our model, which has not voted more Democratic than the nation since 1976, when Jimmy Carter ran. He became the last Democrat to largely sweep the South. Virginia, which now stands as the most Democratic state in the old Confederacy. Well, Jimmy Carter cared that. And the mid-Atlantic states, Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania stands out a little bit there. Trump became the first Republican since Thomas Dewey, remember that, 1948, to perform better in two-party voting there than he did nationally. The other four states reside in safe Democratic hands. Maryland trends are clearly a Democrat, and we're talking about Pennsylvania. The conclusion, let's look at how the states have changed from 2000 compared to 2010, both close to elections where a Republican nominee overcame small popular vote losses to needlessly capture the presidency. So if you look at some of these, basically hasn't changed very much. Broad pattern, generally speaking, with much of the West and parts of the South were more Democratic relative to the national voting in 2016. Well, that is a development that you can thank Hillary Clinton for in places like Texas, that she did much, much better in those states. Let's go to Clear Channel very quickly here, and we'll look at Emerson. We did that in the last cast, but we'll just call this is nationally. Biden is at 26, Bernie Sanders is at 26, and Kamala Harris at 12. Beto O'Rourke at 11, Elizabeth Warren at 8, Twitter King Book at 3, and Amy Klobuchar at 1. The fellow out of South Bend is at 3 points there, and the others are down. Incidentally, this the 24th, Senator Gillibrand of New York will announce her candidacy. And we look at how it matches up there. DJ Trump, Joe Lunchbox Biden, 10 points. DJ Trump, Sanders, Bernie 2 points. Harris 4 points ahead of DJ Trump. And O'Rourke, actually, DJ Trump's ahead of him by 2 in this poll. And Elizabeth Warren is ahead by 2 points also. And if you bring in Howard Schwartz, you'll have, let's see, Joe Lunchbox Biden by 8 points. And the general election there, if you have, let's see, DJ Trump, O'Rourke, and, this DJ Trump, O'Rourke, and Schwartz, DJ Trump would come out by 2 if they were running a race. The Morning Consult has DJ Trump at 41. The Reuters poll at 39. Basically where he's been. And the Emerson poll had him at 43. And if we look at the latest poll from an outliner at 49, and Rasmussen at the Hill, Harris X. That's a right-wing poll by Mark Pinhead Penn at 45%. Wouldn't pay much attention to it. All right, let's move along here. Let me first look at our time here. Okay. We're not in too bad a shape here. We're in actually pretty good shape. In Wisconsin, the judge blocked a lame duck session that Boss Walker and his cronies put together. Wisconsin judge blocked several lightning-fast actions in December by the Republicans there under Boss Walker. Republicans tried a power strip effort there and losing their statewide votes. Outgoing governor in Michigan, that is, was Gateway Snyder there, vetoed all but one of the bills passed there. At least he did something right. In North Carolina, outgoing Republican governor Pat McCreary, defeated by Roy Cooper, signed a number of lame duck measures, some of which have been successfully challenged in court. In Wisconsin, is known as extraordinary session, called in little notice. In the last 2 days and one night sparked heated protests, no doubt about that. Republicans pushed through 82 Walker appointments to various state boards and commissions at the same session. The State Assembly Speaker Voss stated that plainly we are going to have a very liberal government who is going to enact policies in direct contradiction to ours. Anyway, a circuit judge in Dane County invalidated the action, including the appointments. He ruled the extraordinary session violated the state's constitution, which allows special sessions only when convened by the governor. Although Walker signed the legislation, he did not call the session, so therefore it was invalid. Evers immediately acted, and the Attorney General of Wisconsin withdrew the state from Affordable CARE Act legislation. So that is a positive thing. We'll see how it turns out. We already talked about Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, the longest living U.S. Former president. He thought he was going to die in 2015. He's still around. When his cancer had spread to the brain, he took some chemotherapy, and Jimmy Carter is still buzzing along. He also said he's proud to be that former Secretary Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders comport themselves with dignity, talked about issues that matter, and presented a vision for our nation during the 2016 campaign. President Carter is also called an oligarchy situation here. Let me just get now to the one big upset. I'll get this from the Washington Post. Was Murray State here, and their phenom, Mr. Moran. His first triple-double in the NCAA tournament since Michigan State's Green did in 2012. Very, very interesting here. This was the opening. Jay Moran is your breakout performer from tiny Murray State. I believe it's Ohio. Is both unlikely by racking up 17 points, 16 assists, 11 rebounds. Not only led his way for his number 12 races to outrace the number 5 Marquette, is whom they beat. And now, but notched up, just 8 triple doubles there. The last person to do it was Green of Michigan State in 2012. Moran, most notable accomplishments were via ESPN. The first play in 15 points, 15 assists tournament since 2000 for Watson. More points created, a 55 in a tournament game in the past 10 years. More assists in tournament game since Mark Wade of UNLV had 18 in 1987. This young man is on his way to the NBA. Now, Duke's phenom, Zane Williamson, he will make his debut later today for the Duke Blue Devils. I've never been a fan of the Duke Blue Devils. You can tell that. Period. And Syracuse, another of my teams that I chose, they didn't do as well. The Bears, of course. Moved by the Orange by 53.8% of the contest there. But overall, it was a good game. I didn't watch it, but the first half featured 19 combination threes, and left the Syracuse trailing by just a point. But Syracuse did what it could to hang around in the second frame, and it was only down by 3 and so many as minutes left. But Baylor outscored them with Mr. Mason there, who had 6 of his 22 points down the stretch. Eliza Hughes was the high scoring person, 25 for Syracuse, which was playing without its senior point guard, Frank Howard, who was suspended the day before. That was unfortunate. Baylor also benefited from a combination of 27 points from Jamar Butler and Marco Kegler. Anyway, some of the other ones here. Warford beat Seton Hall. I guess we'll go through some of these scores here. Wrap that up. And the Boilermakers in Old Dominion, of course, was the Boilermakers there in that contest. Michigan number 2 and poor old Montana. Sorry about that, Mary. 74. Anyway, we'll get the score in a minute here. And Fletcher McGee broke the NCAA Division I record for 3-pointers in the first round match against Seton Hall. So that's basically it there. Poor old St. Mary's, Villanova. Well, it was only by 4 points there. And Fairleigh Dickinson there. Yeah, Gonzaga was all in this self-class. I saw some people with the Gonzaga T-shirts on or whatever on running around. Anyway, we'll give these scores. We'll do the NBA first here. The Hornets 113 to 106 over the T-Wolves. The Nuggets 113 to 108 over the Warriors. The Hawks 117 to 114 over the Jazz. The Pistons 118 to 98 over the Sun. The Mavericks, the Kings 116 to 100 over the Mavericks, and the Warriors 112 to 98 over the Pistons. And now we'll get back to these scores. I think I didn't. Anyway, Gonzaga was at 87 to 49. Michigan State 76 to 65 for Bradley. Kentucky 79 to 44 for Abilene Christian. Michigan 74 to 55 over Montana. Florida State 76 to 69 over Vermont. LSU 79, close game here, 5-pointer, 79 to 74 over Yale. The Boilermakers, Purdue, fairly low scoring game here, 69 to 48. And Auburn 78, a 1-point game, very close game over New Mexico State at 77. Kansas 87 to 53 over Northeastern. Wofford 84 to 68 over Seton Hall. Seton Hall used to be a power, hasn't been that much lately. And Florida 72-61 over Nevada. And finally, Villanova 61 to 53 over St. Mary's. On to Major League Baseball. In 12, the Mariners and Athletics. It was the Mariners 5 to 4. This is actually a game, I suppose. How they did that? I guess it was the opening game, actually. That was a game played in Japan. So they're opening the season early. Anyway, spring training ball where we should be. The Rays 8 to 1 over Atlanta. The Pistons 7 to 5 over the Orioles. The Tigers 5 to 3 over the Astros. The Cardinals finally won 11 to 3 over the Yankees. The Phillies 13 to 6 over the Blue Jays, and the Mets shut out the Marlins 6-0. The Rangers 7 to 3 over Cleveland, and the Royals 14 to 6 over the Reds. The Brewers 11 to 5 over the Dodgers. The Cubs and Giants tied up 5-5. White Sox 12 to 2 over the Rangers. Angels 2 to 1 over the D-backs. Red Sox shut out the Rays 8-0. And in the second game, the Nationals beat the Cardinals 7 to 1. And finally, the Mariners and the Reds 6 to 3. That's kind of an interesting situation there. The Mariners also played a game in Japan, and that went to 12, and they finally won the game. Mr. Irichi ended up here. Got him a standing ovation. I don't know if we can bring that up or not. Maybe not. We can get his standing ovation. Irichio. Yeah, I'm not sure. We may not be able to do it. Oh well. Anyway, it was his last game, and he retired after the game. Panthers 4 to 2 over the Coyotes. Bruins 5 to 1 over the Devils. The Lightning 6 to 3 over the Hurricanes. The Canadiens shut out the Islanders, and the Blues beat the Red Wings 5 to 2. The Penguins beat the Predators 2 to 1. It was the Flyers over the Blackhawks 3-1, the Avalanche 3-1 over the Stars, the Senators and Flames, the Flames 5-1 there, and the Orioles over the Blue Jackets 4-1. The Jets were shut out by the Golden Knights of Las Vegas, like that name, 5-0. And the Kings are 5-2 over the Sharks. And where are we? The women start later today in Greensboro, North Carolina. And the late game is UNC and Cal, I suppose. And UVC, the first one, and Baylor, the number 1 seed. That's be in Waco, Texas, naturally. The second one would be in, they'll end up in Greensboro, let me get that right. In Charlotte, North Carolina, FSU and the Bucks will be game, and South Carolina and Bell, I guess. I'm just looking at the brackets here. Anyway, then in Greensboro, they'll be in Iowa City and so forth and so on. These are the brackets. I'm not sure it will be able to see more in the schedule or not. No games played. Well, naturally, not any games played. So with the women, we'll have to wait for the scores. We'll get the scores tonight on the women. Now, let me just look at our time here. We got that in. Do we have time? For Clarence Thomas, Clarence Thomas, Clarence Page, he'll never give us that. Why Trump denies the influence of hate groups. White nationalists appeal to alienated young men. This is by Mr. Page. He's writing on the 19th of March in the Chicago Tribune. By now, one should be surprised to hear that a 28-year-old white supremacist who is accused of killing 50 people in 2 mosques in Christ Church cites this country's president, DJ Trump, as his inspiration. You are a supporter of DJ Trump. The Australian nationalist Brenton Tarrant asked himself in a rambling 74-page manifesto is a symbol of renewal of white identity and common purpose. Sure, as a policymaker and leader, dear God, no. Dear God, indeed, when Trump was asked if he thought hate groups were on the rise after the massacre there in New Zealand, he said, I don't think so. Experts say otherwise. It's hard to imagine that the president believes otherwise. After all, he has done intentionally otherwise to fertilize the that rise. Anyway, another example is why the alleged Australian terrorists might have found some sense of shared common purpose with Trump. In 2011, DJ Trump trafficking in various conspiracy theories, a bogus claim that President Obama was secretly Muslim, and before that he said that he was not even a citizen. He falsely claimed that thousands of Muslims cheered in Jersey when the World Trade Center collapsed. Next month he called for a ban on all Muslims entering the U.S. He falsely claimed that Islam hates us. I heard on several occasions a far-right version of a virtual sighting. If he's not an Islamophobe, as he insists, he is not. Neither does he show any desire to alienate the bigots in his base. Thus, we get this nod and wink in his declaration after this was in Charlottesville, which we could commemorate Heather Heyer. Clash between white nationalists, white supremacist, anti-racist groups, which a woman was killed over the removal of the flag. I think there's blame on both sides. The president told reporters, you have some very bad people in that group, but you also have some people that are very fine people on both sides. And, this is just crazy. I'm disappointed at best to hear him equate the side that includes white supremacists with the side that didn't. But the former KKK leader David Duke amongst others in Charlottesville that day, said he was delighted. As offended as I am by Trump's pussyfooting around with racists, I am learning a lot from watching how he makes it work for him. The very fact that he signals a welcome to alienated young men who make up a key demographic in the organized hate groups gives him a lot of mileage, and they're allies according to those who belong to such groups. He drew me in at 14 years old, and I was searching for identity, community, and purpose. What drew me in, the former Chicago skinhead there, Kristen Piccolini, said on NPR, all things considered, and Piccolini is now 44, evidently saw the light and left the White Power movement. He wrote a memoir and co-founded Peace Advocacy Group, Life After Hate there. Much has been written about the epidemic of alienated young people in modern post-industrial America. The landscape was fertile ground for men who, like Petrolini, who grew up in a south suburb of Blue Island, know where Blue Island is, said recruiting him through the narrative of white supremacy. Much has been written about the salient that's narrative that has gained with the help of the internet throughout Western civilization, including the land down under, particularly in Australia. This is why Torrent stream played tribute to, amongst other haters, Anders Breivik. That's the Norwegian far right who killed these 77 people, and he did a little better job, I suppose, why he liked him. The empowered the haters gave urgency to discuss how to clean up the internet, but of all of us do something to help break the cycle of hate, fear, and resentment. Asked how he decided to take his exit from the skinheads. Peccolinti, butchering his name now, said ultimately, it was an interaction with people of color who and showed me compassion when I least deserved it, and the moment was clear to me. Peccolinti. Anyway, other hate group members tell similar stories, and by the way, have African Americans who I know who fortunately decided that certain hate whitey movements offer more self-destruction than self-fulfillment. We are all searching for identity, community, and purpose in our life. That is what Peccolinti said. Especially when you're young. Well, no doubt about that, but not all these people are young. They do, in fact, know better. But what he didn't mention, Mr. Page, is how industrial capitalism plays into that, and the corporate forces that put the DJ Trumps of the world in a power. So you have to look at the system as a whole. There will always be these characters out there that they can utilize, and they utilize the Tea Party, which effectively was the same thing. Now they have the anti-abortion thing. Governor Bryant in Mississippi signed some heartbeat legislation, which is anti-science. But why do these people fall for that? Well, a number of reasons there. Alienation with DJ Trump. You even have African Americans that support him for various reasons. In this type of society, particularly in the American society, there are people that are alienated for all kinds of reasons. And it's not necessarily economic, it's socially. They didn't get where they assumed they would get into society. In opportunistic society, there can only be so many opportunistic people. And this is a big problem. We'll be on Numbers, man, talking about this with DJ Trump's economy and this whole idea of opening factories. Well, the problem there is the same problem Barack Obama faced. He did not have the hiring hall. The GMs and the Fords of the world, yes, they will do some PR, but they will ultimately decide where to put their factories, what products to build, and that is guided by a number of things. We saw a situation where of all things, the solar energy business. Some of those people oppose the Green New Deal. Why? Because they are putting those solar panels in Texas and some of these right-wing states. So they're making money on it. So that's part and parcel of the system. Nonetheless, we'll have the week that was. More on March Madness, obviously. We'll have the open source report, and we'll talk about the Boeing airplane and the part that software plays in that, and the business model around software, and that's why we favor open source. This will do it for us. Have a good week, everyone. We'll talk to you on the week that was on WBRN and the Boston Red Network. Good day.